up, YouTube? Guys, welcome to the channel. And today we are at a cemetery about 15 miles from Chicago. So got a couple of interesting things we're going to show you guys, and one of them is a Spanish flu mass grave. It happened during Spanish flu. Grave was at the end of 1918. There's not that much information that I could get on it, but it's around November, December 1918. So I'm just going to go through a few details about what happened during the Spanish flu, and then show you a couple little interesting things. Now, the Spanish flu, it being named the Spanish flu only because the belligerents, the people who were fighting during World War I, France, Germany, England, they had a freedom of the press issue, I guess you could say. The governments basically told the people there that you guys cannot have freedom of the press. So during that time, Spain was one of the first countries that decided to report on the Spanish flu. So there's a mass grave that's about 150 to 200 yards from here, and I'm going to show you guys that. And how do I know this, and other people probably don't, is because I used to work in a cemetery for about 5 or 6 years. But first I want to show you guys a couple interesting graves. Now, this is a gentleman named Donald Baker. And Donald, or Mr. Baker, was only 30 years old when he passed away. Well, 31 maybe. It doesn't have the month that he passed away. So Mr. Baker actually had a heart attack, a massive heart attack. He was at work, and he was driving on a forklift, and witnesses say that he was on the forklift, and then they looked over and he was on the ground, while the medical examiner said basically that he had a massive heart attack. And it was induced, they think, from alcohol, pretty much. He was an alcoholic, I guess. So he was only 30 years old, and it's pretty sad. Now, with the Spanish flu was first, well, from what they say, if you read Google or see other documents, the Spanish flu was first noticed in Camp Funston by a gentleman that brought it there named Albert Gitchell. And Albert Gitchell was a cook at Camp Funston in Kansas. And the 4th of March is when he brought the virus there, which they think the virus was from migratory birds or other things like that. But now, as we talk about the whole migratory birds thing, I don't know if a lot of you remember maybe 15 to 20 years ago with the, I forgot what that was called, the West Nile virus. They said that it was from the crows that were in this area, in Chicago. Now the crows, it turned out that after research, after 10 or 15 years, it was not the crows that were doing it. It was actually more of the American robins. Crows get a bad rap, and they shouldn't. But basically the mosquitoes bite the robins, and then the mosquitoes come and bite us, and that's how they spread the disease. Kind of like ticks too. Ticks bite the deers, and then the ticks bite us, and then we get Lyme disease from that. But that is the overall view of how the Spanish flu affected us and got to us. Migratory birds. So a lot of people think that Mr. Albert Gitchell, I think they might have said, I've read a couple different things about it, that he was a farmer and a couple other things, but basically we're able to get a lot of these diseases, and we've seen the last couple years with some of these diseases that we've had, and then basically they come from other animals and they affect us. I don't want to mention them, but yeah, and it could get a lot worse. But as far as the Spanish flu and this mass grave over here, from what I understand, the people that are in this mass grave, which is anywhere from 25 to, some people have told me 60 people. I'm not sure. Like I said, I've done some research on it, but there's not a lot of information about it, and that this was a lot of lower class people, or I guess you could call them homeless people. And at the time in these bigger cities, especially during the second wave of the Spanish flu, so the first wave was around early spring, March, April of 1918. The second wave that came in the middle of August was a lot worse. Now, a couple numbers that popped into my head was, in the beginning of 1918, the first wave of the Spanish flu, there was something like 25,000 recorded deaths in the United States, which is bad. But the second wave that happened at the end of summer, beginning of fall, there was something like almost 300,000 deaths in the United States. So that's a lot of people. And obviously it spread to different areas of the world very quickly. Like I said, in the beginning of March, it was in Kansas, in Camp Funston. And I think they said by March 15th, it was already in New York. And then by April, it was already in the ports in France and other places in Europe, because we were fighting World War II, and that just spread it like wildfire throughout the whole world. Now, India particularly got hit very hard. India had somewhere between 10 and 15 million deaths from the Spanish flu at the second half, which is the second phase of it, or the second round. That round in particular was very, very bad. And yeah, 10, and I've even seen 20 million people died from the Spanish flu in India. So, yeah, this mass grave here that you guys are going to see in a couple minutes, I know about it because I worked for the cemetery for 5 or 6 years, and I know about it because I heard about it through the grapevine, through people that I worked with, and it's quite obvious because if you look at the area, you'll see a bunch of newer graves, and it's almost squared out the way that the newer graves. Because the Spanish flu was around 1918, 1919. You can see the newer graves are around it, and then there's an area where a lot of the people are buried. And it's supposed to be mass graves because they were throwing 5 to 10 bodies in there at a time. And from what I understand is that they kind of dug a decent sized pit, threw 8, 10, 12 bodies in there, and then within a week they would dig a pit right next to it. And they would dig a pit right next to it within a week, and they would have 10 or 12 more, 15 more bodies. And yeah, so it affected the whole world eventually. And at that time, it was very devastating, very, very devastating. Now, they ended up finding out that this particular strain, known as the H1N1 strain, ended up popping up in Russia in 1977, and then in the United States in 2008, I think it was, and it killed a lot of people. So I think it was in California or something like that, or one of those states out west, that they dug up some well-preserved bodies. There was actually a woman that was very obese, and they dug her body up. They took samples of her lung tissue, and they found out that it was the H1N1 virus, which is the same as the Spanish flu. We're in the area where the mass graves are at, or the mass grave is at. So you can take a look right here, and you can kind of see. Okay, as you guys can see, this area right here, which I believe that it's more about 10-15 feet this way, you can see a little dip in the ground, and that's where a lot of these people are buried. Their graves are unmarked, unfortunately, but there is a person over here that was buried 1920. I don't know about at the time if they just had the money to do it. If you ever work for this business, it's a lot about how much you can pay. And that's it. If you can't pay, then they're not going to mark your grave. That's why I was thinking that a lot of these people were either homeless or from a lower class, so to speak. But yeah, we're about 15 miles from Chicago, from downtown Chicago. Walk a little bit over here and just check some of this stuff out. This area right here is the, right in front of us right here, is the Freemason section of the cemetery. Now this was big back 100 years ago. A lot of people think that the Freemasons are a secret society, but who knows? Now, before they started doing construction over here, it used to be all a wooded area right here. So this is just a little brief history, and I thought that it would be kind of cool to check out one of the mass graves that are here. This is just a little brief history. If you guys like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, and make sure that you hit that notification button, because there's a lot more of this stuff to come. So we're going to be doing a lot more different videos about a lot of different things and at a lot of different cemeteries. So yeah, please like, subscribe, and make sure you guys hit that notification bell, please.